Alright. So, I wasn't quite sure how to go about this one. The only thing we knew about this one for a while was you very much desperately wanted me to talk about Once.
Yeah, I thought it needed to be said.
I was like, I feel like there are a number of options, but for some reason I can't think of any of them.
I didn't think there were.
When
honestly.
I was thinking about the process of making music.
Right.
And watching the songs kind of build them. Watching the songwriters build the songs before our very eyes. So all I could think about was Hustle and Flow.
Music and lyrics?
But I was like, that just doesn't work. Well...
A little bit.
In tone, they're so different, though.
In tone, absolutely not. But just, like, on, like, the surface, maybe.
I do get that.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well, there is another, Dublin-themed music movie that also has Glenn Hansard in it.
Exactly.
So, let's just do the commitments. It might get us 3 views, but I'm sure somebody's seen it.
You never know what's going to do business. I've learned this throughout the time we've done this.
Yes, this is, I guess, what was decided upon.
Yep.
So, we're going to start with Once, obviously, which, it's very interesting because, despite the fact that Glenn Hansard has been around for a while, and in fact was in the Commitments, which was, 16 years prior to Once, the thing about it is that, Marquetta it's kind of weird to think about when you watch Once and you see the romance blossom. Because you see Glenn Hansard right here somewhere. And when this movie came out, Marquetta would have been 3 years old.
Well, you know.
But the thing about it was, Once came out in 2007.
Yep.
Which was one of the biggest years for movies ever.
Oh, yeah.
So many great and fantastic movies that are still being long talked about came out in 2007. Go look at a full list of the movies that came out in 2007. It will fucking amaze you.
Oh, absolutely.
And this movie, this tiny little itty bitty movie, starring 2 people that nobody really knew at the time, at least by name, and it's just a very small romance musical kind of thing. Very, very indie in approach. A lot of the time it just looks like it was shot on a regular video camera.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Ended up becoming one of the most beloved movies of that year.
And it still is.
And it's brought up with all those big movies. Like you say, 2007 was an amazing year. You had No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood and... you go through the whole list. Assassination of Jesse James. Nobody forgets to say Once. Nope. It's always in there. And that is, for a movie this small, that's incredible. And really, really shows just how much of an impact such a small movie can make.
And that's the reason it went to Broadway, too.
Yeah.
Did quite well for itself.
And ended up winning the Oscar against the fucking 3 Enchanted songs.
Yeah, I know.
Because long before you saw this, you were bitter about that.
I was.
I had already seen Once, and I was like, dude, trust me. Just trust me.
You know me pretty well. I think that it's probably a good idea that I trust you on that.
Yeah. And once again, with that indie feel, we start off with the fact that there are 1 or 2 things in here that might be... It's almost like those eye-roll-worthy indie things. This is yet another one of those movies where the main characters don't have names. They are just guy and girl.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, that's already film school 101. The only thing it's missing is being upside down and in black and white.
But it doesn't matter. That's the thing.
But yeah. And then it starts immediately, too, because after we have the opening scene, we have this scene where the title comes down, and it's the first time she runs into him, and it's just one wide shot where he's this small in it, and we're slowly zooming in, and he's singing this song. And the thing about it is, we do get, a little exposition, and we do get his backstory, and we figure out, about the girl that left him and all that stuff. And just where he is in his life. But before we know any of that stuff, before we're given any exposition on this dude's life, just watching him perform this song tells us everything we need to know about him. Just in this one song. The lyrics, the way he's performing, the passion that's in it, the clear emotion that he's, turning out with it. It all we pretty much know everything we need to know about him just by the way he performs this song.
Right.
And then it eventually comes to a point to where we're not quite sure how we're supposed to take him. Because this opening scene with Anton, I think he says is the guy's name, it's a guy he clearly knows and has had runs in with before.
Right.
Because, and we kind of go back and forth where we're not quite sure how to take him because we see this scene with Anton where he's obviously... if you try to steal from him, he'll do his best to, fuck you up or at least scare you into giving his shit back. But he's also got enough compassion in him to where he actually gives Anton some of his money and just lets him go. And he's like, fine, just take it. There you go. If you're sick, then go do that. Take care of yourself. But then we also have the scene right after that where I was just talking about the song he performs, and then she comes up and she throws like a dime at him.
Right.
And he just kind of looks down at it and he's like, yeah, 10 cents. And it's just like the most passive-aggressive thing you've ever seen. And it really kind of adds a complexity to the character because we've seen already, 3 minutes into the movie, him perform this song that basically tells us exactly where he is now without any exposition. And just how emotional of a person he is. But we've also seen some compassion he has for people even when they're stealing from him. But he can also be super passive-aggressive even when you're giving to him. It's a really kind of complex character, and you kind of just have to gauge exactly how you're going to take him as we see him progress through the story. Because if he were... Because it's all in his performance, because honestly, if it wasn't for the humanity that Glenn Hansard gives him in this performance, this character could very well be insufferable to watch.
Yeah.
But he gives the character such a humanity in everything that he does, whether good or whether questionable, and that really just kind of makes him definitely, regardless of where he is or what's happened to him, you're with him to whatever goes on here. Which of course, he ends up meeting her, and then this romance blossoms, and it's one of those... We get movies like this every now and then. I think it's getting a little more common, where it's very musically themed movies, and naturally, through the music they write and perform together, their story is being told.
Right.
That they address full force in the music, but pretty much refuse to outside of the music. And then, obviously, that brings us to one of the great scenes, like not just movies, but individual scenes of this entire year. The song that this movie won an Oscar for. And it's one of those cases where as soon as you watch the movie, even if you don't know what it is, this scene, it's really, really great and smart that this scene happens so early.
Yeah.
Because when you're watching this, I notice this every time, when you're watching this movie with other people that haven't seen it before, it's the building of falling slowly that pulls everybody in. Like, for the first 15 minutes, they're like, I'm kind of into this, or I'm not really into this. But then the falling slowly scene happens, and then everybody's just hooked from then on. I watched this with my dad and stepmom, and they were just kind of... Like, we were watching it, like, my stepmom was kind of half watching it, and I wasn't sure about showing this to them. I really, really wasn't sure, but I just thought I would anyway, just to see what kind of reaction it'd get. And just from them kind of watching it, Falling Slowly was in serious consideration for one of their wedding songs. So, that scene always makes a huge impact. And like I said, pretty much is kind of the selling point for the movie to its audience. And just the way... And I always love watching scenes like I was talking about, like with Hard Out Here for a Pimp and Love That Trick and Hustle and Flow. It's always fascinating to see a song that's now well known in like its built up process, where he's just teaching her the tune, and then he goes into the lyrics, and then they play together, and we hear the song as we know it. And just the way we watch it kind of built from the first note up is always a really... It makes a really fascinating movie scene, and I love stuff like that. Um, and a lot of the movie is that, pretty much, which is great. And that's the thing that really, really sells this movie too. Is this movie would pretty much be nothing if the music wasn't great. And there's usually at least one or two here where it's like, hey, yeah, we have this song, but the others are good too. There's always that one song. Like almost every musical has their Chili Down or their Cheer Up Charlie.
Right.
That one where it's just like, I kind of don't think that one should be in here. All the songs in here are any variation of good to incredible. There's only, I think, Gold. The song's either called Gold or Gold is in the title.
It's called Gold.
Okay, and that's kind of the one where it's like, I like it, but it's not necessarily at the level of the rest of the songs in the movie. But still, that's good. When that's the lowest your bar gets, that's pretty damn good. And the fact that the music is constant because the story's told through it. And it makes, there's so many scenes in this movie where people are doing the most mundane things, but because they're doing them to this music, it's just fantastic. Take the scene when she's listening to his music. Oh shit, what is the actual name of the song? But it's when she's learning the lyrics to his songs so that they can perform them together, and she's listening to his song and singing along to it, to the point where her, the way it's played out is we hear the song and her voice actually is more prominent than his. His is practically way in the background, even though it's him on the CD.
Right.
And this whole scene is her going to get batteries. She's gone to get batteries and she walks home. And she walks home singing this song, and we see it in real time. The whole walk home. And it's probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And that's all it is. She's walking home after buying batteries. And it's probably one of my favorite scenes. Probably my second favorite scene in the movie after Falling Slowly. And yeah, because the way it's put together like that, where everything, there's no extra music in the movie. It's all being performed within. Right. Because the way, music plays over scenes, but that's only because we started in one scene and another scene is intercut with it. So the music that's telling the story that they're performing within the movie is also serving as, its own soundtrack to the movie itself. Because somebody will start a song and then a whole other scene will play out, not related to that, but the song they're playing from that previous scene, the audio is going through into the next scene, and it plays as if it's a soundtrack and not just the prior scene leaking in. And I just love the way, and anytime you hear music in the movie, that's the way it is. It's always somebody playing it, a character within the movie actually playing it. And I really, really love that. A lot. And of course, another thing, obviously, that it wouldn't be the movie without is the chemistry between them and the way the love story just gradually happens. To the point that we're not totally sure if that's even what's happening. Because, a lot of it stems from him being heartbroken and lonely. We know that. And then there's her side where she's just got a whole lot going on. There's not even, you kind of struggle to say it's a love story for a very large portion of the movie. But then suddenly you realize, throughout the entire movie, we've just been gradually, subtly just getting there. And then there it is, and there's the predicament. And the reveal that she's been married this whole time. We know she's had a child, but we didn't realize the dude was still... she basically says he's basically not there, but the fact that she's actually married to the dude never came up. And that's pretty much where our main conflict lies, but they don't really make it too much of a conflict. Nope. It's there, and yeah, it's it throws a wrench in things and makes the stuff that's going on not exactly the way we thought we were seeing it to begin with. But it's not a blown out of proportion conflict either. It's just oh, well, there's that. But then in that very scene, we get that one moment that's in there where you kind of, unless you speak Czech, I guess you don't know. But you'd have to look it up. But you can kind of tell Like, if you watch, I mean, maybe because we know now that it seems obvious, but it seems like just watching it, just with the way it's conveyed, you can almost kind of tell. Um, when he's kind of asking her questions about her husband, and he says, "Do you love him?" And she responds in Czech and smiles and walks away. And he's like saying, What did you say? I don't understand that." And then she just never tells him. Apparently, if you look that up, her response to "Do you love him?" was "I love you,"
Mm-hmm.
and he never knew that. She said it in Czech and then never told him anything else in regards to that. And then, of course, as we know, they end up going their separate ways. And one thing I want to talk about real quick, despite the fact that this came out in 2007, it's very interesting how old-fashioned everything they do is. That really adds to everything, too, because everything's on a tape or a CD. Anytime they talk to somebody, it's typically through a landline. And if you don't have a landline, you just have to... Most of the time, when they, meet up, one of them either has to look for the other, or they just happen to run into each other. There's no, exchange of numbers or anything like that. It's all really, really old-fashioned, which I really like. And I think that's a really interesting approach to take to it, too, because it's almost... I wouldn't necessarily say timeless, because I'm sure people now will watch it and say, tapes and CDs look so weird now. And seem like such a hassle. But it does give it a certain kind of quality that makes it feel, unique in itself. Another thing I forgot to mention that I also love is the way we always get reactions to the music from characters in the movie. Like when they go into the store and they're just like, "Hey, we're gonna play a little bit," and the clerk's just like, "Yeah, okay," and then he just kind of minds his own business. And then when they perform Falling Slowly, and then by the time we get to the end of it, we cut back to the clerk, and we see that he's kind of been listening to the whole time. And it's not a big reaction, but we know he's been listening the whole time, and he really likes it. And it's just a really nice moment. And then we get that again when they're recording for the first time, when the dude's just like, "Yeah, I do this all the time, and you go in there, and I'll do this." They have to wait because he's on his damn phone, and it's like he's just so disinterested. He's like, "All right, you can record now," and then he just pulls out a magazine and he's not paying attention. And then they perform the song, and by the time they get to the end of the song, the recording dude's really into it and really happy with it. So I always love seeing the progression of other people's reactions to the music itself. And so, yes, it's very... This movie is definitely a how-to in regards to telling a really simple story in a really simple way, but being able to make something really, really special and really memorable and something that really, really sticks with people. Even in a year like this, most people consider it one of the more standout movies of one of the biggest years we ever had in movies. And that's just, yeah. And like I said, the romance itself just feels so real, really, and the way they kind of part ways. There's that tiny, tiny little heartbreaking moment when she sells her flowers, and then after they've parted ways and he's getting ready to go to the airport to leave for London, he hears a flower girl calling out, and he checks to see if it's her real quick, and when it's not, he just keeps walking. And it's just that tiny little moment just kind of hits you right there. Just in the smallest way, too. And yeah, it's very interesting how many different reactions we get to this, too. Because like I was saying, I showed this movie to so many people when it came out because it would always get so many different reactions. I'd show it to one person, and they would love it. And then I'd show it to another person, and they would think it was boring. And it was like a continuous trend. It was like... Somebody loves it, somebody thinks it's boring, somebody loves it. And it was just this ongoing pattern. I showed it to you. And yeah, just shameless. Just absolutely shameless. We're two dudes. I'm sitting there right in front of you. And you're...
Doesn't matter, man.
Just waterfall.
It's just the story. It's just so identifiable. It really is. I mean, I sang Falling Slowly on the Disney Fantasy for the talent show one night, and I just put everything I had into it.
To think you were upset because of Enchanted.
I was kind of in a different phase of my life at that point, so it was kind of like I was more inclined to accept Enchanted for that reason. But
well, it's also not only is Falling Slowly a great song too, but in the context of that first scene and then the end when they've gone their separate ways, but that song still connects them.
And it still does. And I mean, and when Chris Allen performed it on American Idol, he just they had like a crazy amount of iTunes downloads from it. And then it seems like every year on Idol, someone would perform Falling Slowly because they wanted to capture that magic.
So, yes, this was definitely... And I remember when I first heard about it, too. I think it was just... it was on Ebert and Roper.
Mm-hmm.
When I think Ebert was gone at this point. But
I've seen this YouTube video.
It was Roper and somebody.
Yeah.
And they were like, they were just raving. And I was like, I don't even know what this is, dude. And then, of course, the Oscars started rolling around. I was like, well, I'll go ahead and check this out. That was back when we had video stores. I was like, I'll go to the video store and see what Once is all about. So,
as our video store was closing, I did purchase this.
That may or may not be how I got mine, too.
I think it actually is, honestly, because we all bought a lot of stuff when Hollywood closed.
Okay. I want to do this in half an hour, so let's see if we can talk about The Commitments in 9 minutes. The Commitments is by Alan Parker.
Right.
Who had, what year was that? I want to say he had just done The Wall. Maybe not. They may be a good decade apart, I don't know. But it's not too far away from doing The Commitments. Alan Parker had also done The Wall. So we knew that he had definitely a musical background. His son also has a big musical background. And like he directed The Life of David Gale with Kevin Spacey as well. And I think his son did the score for that. So... a whole lot of music in his background, as well as fantastic movies like Midnight Express and Angel Heart, among many, many others. And when you look at The Commitments, this is it's really funny because John Carney, after he did Once, did Begin Again and Sing Street.
Right. Just
proving time and time again, I know it's only twice, but really, time and time again, many times over throughout those movies, that the magic of Once is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
Yeah,
it may very well be with the Towers. Apart from the song, obviously. I just mean that. But anyway, and the reason I say this is because I want to talk about Sing Street. Because when I talked about Sing Street, I was talking about the fact that we got so many of these let's start a band, wacky hijinks ensue movies going on. Like That Thing You Do.
Yes. Another movie that needs to come to Versus sometime down the line.
But before movies like That Thing You Do, we had The Commitments.
Right.
And while we did have Let's Start a Band movies prior to this, I think The Commitments is kind of the movie that made it cool. The Commitments is the movie that made everybody want to make that movie. Because we have... the very interesting about it is that the setting gives it a very interesting vibe for what's to come, because the idea is there are these guys, and the way they put it is North Dubliners are the blacks of Dublin. So they get the idea. Jimmy, who's kind of their leader, who starts this whole thing, gets the idea to start a band that basically does 60s soul cover songs.
Yep.
Which is pretty much completely and totally out of place in their community, to say the least. Which is going to make this an uphill battle, but they go to, they get their stuff from the black market, but from this guy that strokes a rabbit and has, like, a dog with a muzzle on it, and that's where they get their equipment. And one of the things that really makes this work is that Jimmy is a very charismatic leading character. There's him, and there's also, the actor's name is Andrew Strong, I think, is the guy who plays the lead vocalist. And he's really, really good in this, too. Not just his vocals, but the performance itself, because it's very... Like, a lot of the plot and where it goes relies on his kind of boisterous quality. And this all kind of comes together, and like I said, basically turns into the movie that kind of really started this trend of let's make a band movie. One of my other personal favorite characters is Bernie, not just because she's played by Trudy from Pulp Fiction, but there's such a wide variety of colorful characters in here too, all of which kind of have a great charisma about them. And then there's we kind of obviously there's going to be montaging for a lot of this to start with, and we have the great scenes where it's they go the very classic montage scenes of going through the people that really don't belong. Like you have like the doors getting slammed in people's faces. Like you have the really tough guy that shows up and he's bald and he's got the earring and he's got like the neck tattoos and he's like, I'm here to sing Barry Manilow. And then you have the dude that shows up just in all makeup and they don't even ask him anything, they just slam the door in his face. And it's just really, like I said, it really has a lot of qualities that you saw a lot in later movies because everybody kind of wanted to be as cool as this movie is. And there's a lot of I can't guarantee, but I feel there is a lot of, this will come as no surprise, Spinal Tap influence. Mainly in some of the predicaments they find themselves in, like when they get a gig at the church, but they're gonna disguise it as like an anti-drug thing. So they make a banner that says heroin kills, and it's got like a syringe on it. But they accidentally spell heroin with an E. So throughout this gig, you see heroin kills at the top, and it's like this very faded E that's still prominently there. And I believe at this same gig, the amps end up exploding, and somebody gets their head busted on a mic. It's all very, it's like kind of pushing the Spinal Tap thing even further, which is really great. And there's a lot of great moments like when they're going through the brass instruments and they're playing, and the guy gives him the advice about just pretend it's your favorite celebrity's nipple. So he's like mine is Gina Lollobrigida, and he's like, I'm gonna pretend mine's Kim Basinger. He says Bassinger, but we know what he means.
Right.
I guess because he's Irish. And now as far as it goes, what I was talking about with Once, where they build the songs, even though obviously it's not their own songs, they're doing covers, it's still fun to see the way it shows us the process of how they kind of still have to put the songs together and put where there's the there's the moment where they're trying to teach the backup dancers to sing without their accents. So just a whole bunch of stuff like that. But then there's also every now and then they sprinkle in also some things that are totally unrelated that are just memorable and funny, like the horse in the elevator. Where it's like there's just a kid standing there with a horse at the elevator, and he's like, why didn't you and your horse take the stairs? It's like, my horse can't take the stairs, he would die. And it's like, that has nothing to do with anything, but it's for some reason this funny thing in there that you just remember. And then the thing about it, the thing that really keeps the movie going is it's just constantly bursting with energy. Like even when it's in its low spots, there's just nothing but charisma and just energy just blasting through the screen at you just at all times. With how, colorful these characters are and just all the stuff, the way they kind of interact with each other and the music itself and how they're actually a really good band. Just all this stuff. And also that really helps the pacing too. Like this movie is 2 hours that does not feel like it at all. This movie just moves like lightning, which is always a good thing. If there's one problem, it does, despite all this energy and the pacing being completely on point, by the time we get to the end, it kind of feels like something. I know, it feels like we could have gone in a direction that we didn't. Like, we could have branched off and kind of went further into other things, but we just kind of stay in the same place, and then it just kind of ends. So that's kind of the only time when it kind of loses me. Mm-hmm. Where it's always, like, every time I watch it, it's very just, like, I feel like this movie is so close to absolute greatness. But when we get to the ending, it just kind of, like, it doesn't take a dive for the worse or anything, but it just kind of, it doesn't really peak or go any particular place.
Right.
It just kind of, reaches a point, and then we just kind of do that until we've reached the end, and they all go their separate ways. So there is also a really nice epilogue where every different person ended up. There's the guy that became the doctor, and like the music's still alive in him, and he still kind of sings even while he's doing his doctor stuff or whatever. Yes, I don't know exactly. I know in some circles it's very, very popular, but there's also a lot of circles where it's not. So, I'm not really quite sure. Had you heard of it prior to this?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I just haven't had a chance to check it out.
I think it did like really well at the Baptist too.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing that actually.
So, yes, while it is very good and like I said, it's very much kind of really brought this, whole concept into the spotlight and made everybody kind of want to copy it. I still very obviously, it's kind of rare to reach the magic of once. So, I mean, it's really no contest as far as me picking between these two, but still, that's what those are. Much like the Commitments, this thing's just going to abruptly end. Okay.
All right. So ends another edition of Versus. Check out the AJ's Movie Reviews, the very strange AJ's Movie Reviews from 2 days ago, talking about Sausage Party and Pete's Dragon. The critically acclaimed versions of both movies. Yeah, check those out. We did our 7th Halloween Horror Nights 26 podcast last night. Check that out here on the network or on iTunes if you are so inclined. Podcast Network on iTunes, on Google Play, and also on Stitcher. On Zazzle for merchandise, on Twitter at Podcast Network, and of course, that's pretty much the video for this week. Next week, I guess we're going to go with Biblical Epic. Yeah, I know. I roll my eyes too, but you put yourself through it.
It's my second least favorite genre, but
yeah,
might as well.
That's coming next week, so obviously you put 2 and 2 together, realize what we're talking about. Next week, starting tomorrow, we've got wrestling content, Raw on Monday, Wednesday on Wednesday. We have Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view on Friday night at midnight. We have, of course, Saturday NXT at 10 o'clock, maybe a little bit after, it just depends on when it finishes, and also SummerSlam, 11 o'clock, and then after that we have Raw. So yeah, we got a lot of wrestling content coming, and more Horror Nights stuff coming very soon, because they just announced the repository, and I'm super excited to be able to talk more about that. So that being said, I want to thank you guys and girls out there for watching. AJ, any parting words?